They said the bye week would have no chance against the Chargers, but the Chargers struggled with the bye week. That is the Texans. And we're going to talk about all that and more on this edition of the Bullpen.
To throw the punches away. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Tagged down for a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to the Bullpen. Unless you doubted that the Texans could beat the Chargers, then maybe less welcome. I don't know, all Texans fans are welcome, but if you doubted the Texans and you're not a Texans fan, what are you doing? Why are you listening to this podcast? But, I mean, we welcome it. Welcome to the Bullpen. As always, I'm James Roy. With me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
I mean, a lot of people didn't see the Texans being here and being able to beat this team. We'll definitely talk about it. It was a great game. It had everything. It was definitely, if you were a football fan and you wanted to see X, you got it in some form or fashion. It really was a wild game, and glad it went our way.
I'm glad it went our way too. I think it gave us a lot of hope for next week. Just as we usually start, thinking about hope and things that gave us, more to look forward to next week against the Chiefs. How do you feel about CJ's performance? We'll start with that. CJ Stroud, how did he do?
I mean, I think you saw a mentally different dude after that, fateful play where, he fumbles the football, rolls back, finds Xavier Hutchinson. After that, it was like this guy went from a dude that kind of looked a little unsure of himself to like, let's just get this done. And you saw a different kind of energy from him. I think you saw more aggressive emotion from him than we've seen all season long. Dudes beating on his chest, that sort of thing. I mean, that's not CJ Stroud. So it was really good to see. I think, obviously he's got to carry that over into a hostile environment where, he's been. So, I mean, that does help. But, um, you don't have the friendly confines of NRG now. Now you got to go on the road and get it done.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see them. And then make sure you subscribe to the podcast because we're definitely previewing next week's matchup with the Chiefs, which has been settled at time of recording, and will be the team that the Texans play next week. For me, I mean, I think it was said best. I can't remember who tweeted this, but because I'd love to give them credit, but it feels like 2023 CJ Stroud came out when he had the fumble, the throw to Xavier Hutchinson, and then from then on out, it's like that's just what it was. And one of the things that stuck out to me, we've been talking all season about CJ's a big play guy. CJ is always holding on to the ball too long, looking for the big play, and everyone's like, just take the check down. And I think just as important a part of that conversation when it comes to taking what the defense gives you is the ability. CJ is not inept when it comes to running. He just never does it. And so there's plays where it's like, dude, you could have ran and picked up 5 yards and you threw an incomplete pass that most quarterbacks probably wouldn't have let out of their hand. And so seeing him get a significant chunk of yards on the ground, not being afraid to take what the defense gave from that perspective. And I mean, he also hit some pretty good checkdowns, and was willing to set the offense up better on intermediate drives. I think that was a huge part of why we got a lot better portion of CJ. I'd say maybe 5 minutes left in the first half onward. And I know he threw an interception between after in the second half. Like he didn't play flawless football. It's not like he suddenly was like perfect at everything, but we got like the CJ Stroud that, if you give him the ball with 46 seconds left, I'm confident he can get it down the field and get the Texans a score. That's the kind of CJ Stroud we were dealing with for most of the game. And if that continues, this defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense. And all they really need, and I've spoken to it before, I've made the comparison to the '07 Giants. And I would say that in the postseason, you just need to become, I'm not asking a lot of CJ. I'm saying like 2007 Eli Manning is what we're looking for from CJ Stroud in this postseason. Combined with, Joe Mixon, it's a really good offense talent wise, But if CJ can continue to produce like this with the defense the Texans have, I have trouble seeing them not go all the way. I mean, short of the Ravens making the AFC Championship game, which would, I mean, regardless of how the Texans are doing, the Ravens is a tough matchup in my opinion, just because of how it challenges the Texans defense. But yeah, overall, I like what CJ gave us, and I think that it was funny watching him put up probably the worst football I've seen in my life for like 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes, and then just putting some of the best football I've seen in my life up in the very same game. It was wild to see. I mean, and that brings up a point. So who's it? Brett Coleman, I think, said it on Twitter. He said that's what being a Texans fan is 25 minutes of just chaotic, miserable football, just living in misery, and then suddenly you're winning, and you're like, oh wow, how did that happen? So I mean, do you think that that's a sustainable model? Do you think that this Texans offense has turned the page? Do you think that maybe we'll go into Arrowhead and make some noise? Like, how do you feel about what this Texans team, they flipped the switch at halftime. As a whole, do you think that what the offense did in this game is sustainable moving forward?
I think it is. It's really not something extravagant or something different or something that I don't think they've been capable of in the past. I really just think that it was more about taking what the defense gave you and making plays out of that. We've talked about it all season long, where the short play was there and CJ extended, looking for the bigger play. I think in this game, even before he got rocking and rolling, as people like to speak to, and the 15
Shout out Mark
minutes
Vandermeer.
and
Rock and
24
roll.
exactly 100%. Um, you know, I really think that CJ was making good plays. It's just the level of intensity I think that he had after he was able to, come out of that, what would have been a horrible play and turn into a 99-yard touchdown drive. It just changed his mentality. It changed his focus. Now, you hope that going into next week, uh, the offense looks the same. However, that you have to also respect the defenses you're playing. These are very good defenses. That was a very good defense that CJ saw. Um,
Number
I
one
think
in points per game allowed.
exactly.
Number
So
one.
when you talk about things like that, you have to understand, like, a lot of things had to go their way for them to do as well as they did. Obviously, the defense literally fed into them all game long. Special teams had some plays too. It was complimentary football all the way across the board. They're going to need every bit of that. It's not just going to be, well, can the offense put up enough points? The defense is going to have a similarly impressive game. Um, you know, I don't think they played poorly against Kansas City the first time they played. I do believe that they are playing at a higher clip now, healthier now. So things we saw in the Chargers game that need to travel are definitely the D line. The D line was phenomenal in this game. It didn't matter whether it was Foley, Fatakasi in the middle, Mario Edwards in the middle, Danico Audrey in the middle, or Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter on the wings. Those guys were uh, in the face of the quarterback the entire game. And you're going to need similar pressure on Patrick Mahomes, which is harder to do because Justin Herbert's not as mobile as Patrick Mahomes. I think he can run, he just doesn't want to do it. Patrick Mahomes is constantly looking to do it and constantly looking to put pressure on a defense in those manners to kind of like really make you choose. You're going to stop me, you're going to stop the guy I'm trying to get the ball to. So for me, I think that the Texans defense is almost just as important, if not more important, than the Texans offense because of what they're able to do for that offense, what they're able to do uh, on the scoreboard. I mean, the defense put up some, and special teams put up some points, and those are huge. I think early in the game with this Chargers team, they had an opportunity to get up 14 points, and the defense allowed the Texans to figure out ways to break down a really good defense that had Khalil Mack and Derwin James and Joey Bosa. I mean, there were monsters everywhere. So as much as we like to pick apart the offense and how they struggle and what they need to do better and can they do this and can they do that. I mean, the Chiefs, I think, are kind of an underrated defense. It seems like nobody talks about their defense because all their stars are on offense, but they're constantly shutting other teams down. So, I mean, they got Chris Jones, but outside of that, they've got playmakers, and you just really have to respect them. So I really feel like for the Texans to win playoff games, as we want to see them do, it's going to have to be about all of them. It can't be okay. The offense has to do X or the defense has to do Y. It really has to be a team game. And I know it's kind of a cop out, but it's what you saw in this Chargers game. You really saw all the phases really pull their weight, and it made everybody's job easier. And then the game got out of hand.
You mentioned Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, and I'll give my answer to the question, but I wanted to shout out Mike, who commented on Spotify on the podcast and said that we were throwing around the term elite too much with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, who each got sacks and were getting after the quarterback early in the game. I obviously the whole of their game maybe wasn't, I don't know, they weren't constantly in his face once the Texans got settled and the offense adjusted. But they had themselves what I would say is a pretty good game. Uh, Not saying one way or another if you're right or wrong, just wanted to point it out. And as far as it goes, I mean, I think that the Texans offense translates. I look to this, right? And I posted about it. It's kind of gained some traction. The quote from D'Amico coming out of the half where he said he was asked by the reporter, hey, like what changed? And he said, CJ Stroud changed. And so like the Texans defense is what it is. And the only, I mentioned the Ravens earlier. That matchup only worries me because it's one of the few matchups left on the schedule potentially that could severely trip up this Texans defense because you have to make that decision. Am I going to stop Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson? Or maybe I try and stop both. It just doesn't really bode well. The Texans defense not doing well in that game is what made that game look as bad as it did. The Texans offense kind of did pretty much the same thing it's been doing. I would say maybe a little worse. Um, so when I look at that, the carrying forward into next week, sustaining what the offense did, I think it's very feasible because we're not looking. I mean, the Chiefs' defense is a really good defense. I've not been one to talk them down, but I think that the level the Texans' offense played at last time they played the Chiefs versus what they played at last week, if they can bring what they brought against the Chargers in the second half into this matchup, that could be the difference because like that would have been the difference in the regular season if the offense had shown up in a more significant way. The defense held on as long as it could. I believe that was a game where D'Amico blamed the defense after the game, and like yeah, I mean they gave up 27 points, sure, but like as we talk about a lot, there's this certain atrophy you expect from a defense over time in a game when the offense isn't producing stamina, all that stuff that allows you to play at a high level on defense kind of goes away when you're asked to be on the field so much because your offense can't produce. And so I think what they're doing, what the Texans offense is doing, is very sustainable moving forward. You're definitely right. It's more of a mental game, more of like a C.J. Stroud flipped the switch mentally when that happened. And we've been talking about how all season it felt like the Texans offensive line and Bobby Slowick were out to like just destroy C.J. Stroud mentally, and that it was working. At least I've said it. I don't know. I don't know if you agree with that statement, but I
No.
mean, I think that CJ's head is screwed back on correctly, and as long as it stays that way, um, and I felt like early on, everyone was like, "Oh, it's Bobby Slowick again." I was like, that whole first 25 minutes of the game, the offensive failures mostly fell on CJ. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like there was anyone else to blame for that, and I think that that's why CJ getting right on that play to X was the definitive factor that changed the trajectory of the game. Is because CJ was the one that needed to get right for this offense to function and to do what it did. So I mean, I'm glad he did it. And I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm still kind of hopeful that Bobby Slowick's head coaching opportunities open up. Maybe he gets to go somewhere. I wouldn't mind a change of scenery there, but I'm not blaming him for the first 25 minutes of this game. I think that mostly falls on CJ. Now, there's still time for Bobby to show me that maybe he's at fault for this Texans offense because there's still more football to be played. We'll see how they do against the Chiefs, but I think Bobby got a lot of material to study, a lot to go over and apply that could transfer over into this next matchup. You talk about the defense. Um, I want to get your impression. This is the first time the whole front seven was healthy. It was so healthy that Devin White was inactive. Like that's how healthy it was. Um, what were your thoughts on like the linebacker room with Aziz Al Shair next to Christian Harris? With Toa Toa out there. You already mentioned the defensive line, but just what are your thoughts on that part of the defense carrying on in this game?
The poor linebacking core just totally got overlooked because the secondary was so phenomenal and the D line was so phenomenal. I thought the linebacking core played really well. There was a run stuff by Aziz Al Shair on third down where he shoots the gap and it creates a fourth down that they end up not converting. I thought that was a huge play, and he's got to make that tackle or that drive continues. Toto was in on a bunch of tackles. I feel like you didn't see Christian Harris's name called a ton, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because I felt like the ball was going further down the field and they weren't being attacked, so for me, I don't know if that's a failure on the Chargers for not trying to attack them, or just like, hey, just the way it worked out, it just they wanted to target other areas. But the linebacking core I thought did great, because we're not here talking about mistakes that they made, plays that they missed. Lad McConkey was in the middle of the field a little bit, but I think it was catch the ball, tackle the guy. That dude's a handful. I mean, it didn't matter who was guarding him; he was getting open. He's going to be a really good football player. So I won't say elite. I'll say really good football player.
I'll say really good. Don't want to overuse the word elite, no
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah. I mean, the team won 11 games, and this is one of their leaders. So, you
I'm
know,
pretty sure. I mean, through the last second half of the season, he was playing at an elite level, I would say.
yeah.
But I mean, and he tore us up a little bit. I agree with your point, right? That if we're not hearing a linebacker's name, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And that it was kind of overlooked because the D line was there. I felt like just early going that first drive, it felt like I was like, oh man, here we go, because the Chargers were really moving, and then the defense like stonewalled them and made him kick a field goal at like the 20 or like just outside or maybe just inside the red zone. I can't remember. And then, you know, by the way, I had a parlay. It was Lad McConkey first drive reception, Nico Collins first drive reception, and Joe Mixon rushing or receiving touchdown. And so this play I'm about to talk about really frustrated me because of how it affected that. But Mechie, first play of the game, catches the ball and fumbles it. So then I don't even get a chance to see a full drive where maybe Nico gets a target. So that was a little frustrating. I mean, he didn't even catch a ball until or maybe like late in the first half, almost the second half. But then getting put in the short field after you just gave up a really good drive against that Chargers offense, and you stopped him, held him to a field goal, and then you hold him to a field goal again. I felt like at first there was a short stretch at the beginning of the game where I was like, oh man, I hope this offense hasn't figured it out, because like if they have and this Texans defense falters, like there's no way that we can win this game. And so watching the defense kind of like take a moment, assess, and then lock in was really nice to see. And I think a lot of that fell on the linebackers and the D line. And once they locked in, it really helped out with, I think, Stingley, Lassiter, Murray, the whole secondary, doesn't have the game that it has if the front seven doesn't lock in the way that it did. Because then it is a known fact, like statistically, Justin Herbert does not do very good under pressure. So once the D line pinned their ears back and got in there and forced him to make some throws, you could tell as the game went on and as they kind of figured out this Chargers offensive line and pushed into the pocket and started poking at Justin Herbert, that Herbert started making some really boneheaded decisions that really, over the course of the game, I think really helped out. It's to your point that it's a team game. Like as much as the offense got right, the defense over the course of the game really wore out the Chargers offense and led to a lot of turnovers that set the offense up pretty well. So it was a very complimentary game. I felt like it went really well. One note to discuss is that the Texans are a very young franchise. So anytime they play in the playoffs, it feels like they break some sort of record franchise wise. So here's a couple of things that happened. Generally speaking, not just franchise, but for the first time since 2022, there was a 99 yard, or there was the longest touchdown drive since 2022. Chad Henne led a 98-yard drive. CJ Stroud did a 99-yard drive. It was the 12th 99-yard drive of the 21st century. Pretty impressive feat from the offense there. But looking internally, 122 yards for Nico Collins. That's the most receiving yards in a game by a Texans wide receiver, passing D Hop and Andre Johnson for that number. And then you see CJ Stroud, second win. That puts him at the most wins because only every other quarterback that's won a playoff game for the Texans has only won one, apparently. Um, what do you make of these records? Is this just like a passing thing? Is this just like the Texans are a young franchise? Sure, that's going to happen. Or do you give any significance to it?
No, not really. I mean, obviously, when you only have, 22 years of stuff, when you compare other teams that have over 100 years of stuff, I mean, we're talking about, three or four guys with all the stats for a reason, because they haven't had all these different guys go through this organization and they haven't had the success to turn around and go, okay, we've been to the playoffs so many times. This is, the list isn't very long. So for me, I don't put a whole lot of stock into it because exactly what you said, there's just not a lot there. Um, Even when they interviewed Nico was kind of like, hey, blessed, but it's just kind of I did what I do.
Job's not done.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, um, I guess if you want to make something of it, you can. But for me, it's not a big deal.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about one last thing before we kind of bring this to a close and look forward to the divisional round, the furthest the Texans have ever gone in the playoffs. Speaking of young teams, let's talk about Derek Stingley. I want to talk about him. 2 interceptions. What do you make of his performance? Is it just typical of who Derek Stingley is? Do you think that it had something to do with Justin Herbert? I mean, Justin Herbert threw 4 interceptions. That's one more than he threw the entire 2024 season. What do you make of Derek Stingley's performance?
Derek Stingley's been doing this all year. I don't think I have to speak to how great, I won't say elite, how really good Derek Stingley is, even though he's all pro. So I think that's kind of elite, but I don't want to
I'd say
upset
it's elite.
I don't want to upset anybody for using that E word too much.
I'll say
Anyway,
it for you. I'll use it. Derek Stingley is elite.
I mean, at some point, quarterbacks are going to quit trying him. Right now, people are still thinking that they can beat him, and it's a mistake. I really think that you're seeing him make plays all the time. You're seeing if it's not an interception, it's almost an interception. The fourth down play with Quentin Johnson, I guess they thought they were going to have like a size thing, and that didn't matter. So
That was an
you
impressive play.
you look at like, okay, I'm going to try to beat him on the line because I got a bigger guy and he makes the play. Okay, I'm going to try to go over the top and he makes the play. Okay, I'm going to try to, hit him in the middle of the field and he makes the play. At some point, you just need to go, maybe we don't want to mess with that guy. I don't know when that is. Personally, if they want to keep trying him, go ahead. My money's on Derek Stingley Jr. to do what he does.
Yeah,
That's
I
all I got.
mean, I literally brought up that point just to say I think that we can clearly say the Texans got the best cornerback in that draft. I don't think that's a discussion anymore.
I don't even remember who the other guy is. I don't even know his
Who
name.
is it? I don't even know. I think he actually quit playing football to golf for TaylorMade. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But
I
yeah, I
like
mean,
golf. I can't
Derek.
blame him for that though.
I mean, if TaylorMade offered me some P770s after seeing me swing a golf club, I'd take them. I don't know why they would offer me them after seeing me swing a golf club, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, I think heart and soul. I fully expect like the projection is 5 years, 150 million extension for Stingley. I think you press accept on that request before you even get it. Like you want to get him under contract for years to come. I'm happy to see it after all this time, after the journey he's been through. I'm happy to see it for him. Okay, I actually do have one more question. This is really the last question though. Of all the wild plays, so this game felt like it was drunk half the time. I mean, there was so many wild plays that happened. What, between the blocked, the sequence of sack, 86 yard touchdown, blocked extra point for 2 point conversion, and then CJ's wild play that we talked about turning momentum. What do you think was the wildest play in this game, or wildest sequence of events?
I know for me personally, it was the sack 85-yard touchdown because I it was third and forever like and you thought, hey, we're about to get this football back, we're about to be able to do more, kill this clock and this game, and then Kalen Bullock makes a horrible route towards the ball. I'm glad that it happened in a win because that's 100% a teachable moment that D'Amico's going to be like, look, scoreboard says X. I need you to do Y. He can't beat you. You have to make sure.
I need a better line from you, bud. I need a better line.
I get that you're a ball hawk. I get that you're this is what you do, but I need you to make this play because right now the only way they get back in this game is if Lab McConkey takes that joker to the house. You just cannot allow that. And I love that I love that happened where he could teach that, and then obviously the blocked extra point going the other way. Like you want to talk about your emotions just going all over the place. The 2 sacks, you're over there yelling and screaming, yes, the 85-yard touchdown, you're going, no, the blocked extra point. What? It just you just didn't know. I mean, you were all over the place. You were exhausted when that whole sequence was done. I was. Listen to my
I mean,
voice. It's still
I
not right.
agree. I agree with you. I'm not going to use that moment because you already used it. We've already talked about C.J. Stroud's 34-yard reception or catch or throw, jeez, to Xavier Hutchinson. I'm gonna dive deep for this one because I thought it was a really wild 2 play sequence for the Texans offense. I thought it kind of epitomized what we've seen from this Texans offense for most or a lot of the season at least. And that's there was, I believe it was a 60 something yard reception by Nico that was immediately followed by a halfback pass that then resulted in a fumble that was recovered by the Chargers. I thought that was an incredibly, it was such a, like you're saying with this other sequence, such a bipolar kind of, oh dude, we're totally going to score. And then watching them, I don't know how you go from, 3rd and 16 conversion with Nico Collins on like a 60-yard reception. And then you go, you know what we'll do next? We'll do a halfback pass with Joe Mixon. It's like, okay, yeah, not what I would have done, but yeah, more power to you.
I'm glad you brought that up because I I went to war with this one in the post game. I thought that was a really good play that just didn't work, and everybody and their mother has been begging the Texans to look more and more uh, innovative, like the Detroit Lions. You see what the Detroit Lions are doing and go, why can't we do that? So then the Texans go and do something like that with one of their best players to another best player. The play was designed, and this is the thing that it just blows my mind because people are so upset with this play. And it's like, okay, Joe Mixon's got this ball in his hand. If it's not CJ, who else do you want to have the ball in their hand to decide? Because I believe it was an option to throw or run. So you put your next best player, in my opinion, that could throw the football would be Joe Mixon. You put him out there and give him the option. And then where is Joe Mixon going to go with the football? He's looking for Nico Collins, who, if Nico Collins isn't covered, it's the coolest play. And you got Mixon to Nico for a touchdown, and Houston is on fire. And the place would have been a nut house. Twitter would have been going crazy, going, who is this? Where's this Bobby Slowick been? Instead, Joe Mixon does the smart thing. He's got Nico one-on-one and goes, you know what? He's not all alone. I'm not doing it. Tucks the ball, and for the Chargers credit, because it's weird. Some people don't want to give credit, even though, you should. The Chargers were were punching balls out all day. They got Schultz, they got Mechie, they got Mixon, and Is Mixon a little loose with the ball right there? Yes. Are we going to blame Bobby for being innovated? I won't. I think Mixon
I don't
won't.
blame Bobby for it, right? I guess I'm not like holding that against him. I liked how innovative it was. I just thought it was an interesting decision, right after like any other time, right? Like you kind of catch him off guard. I guess you could catch him off guard with that play right after a big play, but I feel like right after a big play, the move is like run another play, and then like if he had like run a 5 yard run up the middle with Mixon and then said, you know what, second and 5, let's see if we can get this halfback pass to go. That would have been cool. I mean, I like I said, I don't hate the play call. It was just a wild sequence. I thought it was a wild sequence, and I thought it was really wild to go. And that's not a bad thing, right? I like that you point out the Lions, right? The Lions do some crazy stuff like that. They're like, oh, here's our left tackle, put him out wide and see if he can catch a touchdown. Like, okay, cool. So I love that Bobby did it, but it was just really wild to see it because it's just not like I was like a halfback pass right after a 60-yard reception because Bobby's getting greedy. He's getting after he wants more, and I agree with you. That's a good thing. It's a good mentality from Bobby. But that sequence was wild to me, and mainly because of the result. And that also brings up the discussion of coaches look really smart when things go well. Like just looking at the Lions, Dan Campbell goes for it too many times, misses out on the Super Bowl because a lot of people were like, well, you went for it too many times and you basically gave the game back to the 49ers. And it's like, well, if he had made those, you'd have been super hyped to see him in the Super Bowl. So it's a double-edged sword being a coach because you coach or coordinator, you make any decision and if it doesn't go well, no one's going to like it. So Bobby's been dealing with that all season though. It doesn't matter what he does. No one has been a huge fan because the offense isn't working. So
But see, you perfectly described why Bobby should do it because you and everybody else is like, why on earth would you do that? And that's the response you want from the defense. You don't want the defense going, yeah, we saw that coming. No, the whole world is going, what are you doing? And it's like, that's the one dude that's over there pointing his head like, yeah, I want you not looking for this play. I don't want you to be
yeah,
able to telegraph this thing. Yes, if it was 2nd and 2 and it was a run play and they were going run, and then they do it, maybe it works. But on first down, right after a big play, you're expecting the run. They rushed up to the line. You're expecting the run. The whole world was. And that's why I think a lot of people were upset because it was like, just run the football. And it's like, yeah, until something like that works. And then you're going, oh,
hmm,
okay. That was a good play. Go Texans.
yeah. Well, and I almost would have like I would have felt better about it if Joe Mixon had just thrown a 50-50 ball to Nico, and maybe it got picked off because then at least it's like a punt, But I agree with you. It is conditional based off of like the result puts a sour taste in people's mouths, which is why a lot of people were like, why would you do that? But like at the same time, if it works, it looks great, and I don't think it's the wrong call. I'm not holding that against Bobby for like the whole season's, but when anyone's talking about what Bobby did this season, if they reference that play as a reason why they didn't like his play calling, I would be like, look, that's what you asked for from Bobby. So like it's not a strike against him as a play caller. I was just like interested by the call. It was definitely to me one of the more interesting sequence of events that happened in that game. But yeah, well, the Texans moved on. They're they're going to the divisional round, so make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, so that you can follow along with our preview that'll come out later this week. On Instagram, I did a giveaway with Fitted Dad. I'm wearing the hat right now that I got from him a while back, and he gave away one hat. And he messaged me afterwards, and he said, "Look, I'm hype. I'm ready to go all in on this." So he wants to run it back. And this time, instead of giving away one hat, he wants to give away two hats if the Texans win. So if the Texans get their second win in this playoff, you get two winners. So not two hats for one person. Two hats will be given away. So you got an even better chance this time at getting in on it. So you heard it here first. You got a little early going on it because I'm not posting it till Monday night, but or Monday evening. I don't know how you describe that, but either way, that giveaway will be up. And if you're a loyal bullpen listener, you got a little advance notice to get your Instagram ready for that moment. All right. As always, thanks for listening to the Bullpen. I've been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL on Instagram and Twitter. And Tom is at TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. We love talking Texans. We're glad that we get to continue to do it because the Texans are winning and keeping the season alive. We thank you for listening all season long. And if you're new, we thank you for starting to listen. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.
Take the